What I often hear when I start working with founders is how they feel trapped by the very businesses they've created, that they are shackled to their emails and their inbox is constantly on open, and that they're still the silo for pretty much most decisions in the company. And this sense of feeling shackled and that they've created this monster that they have to continuously feed is quite common among founders who have started a business with a visionary idea. They want to bring something to life, but then the constraints of the business start to make them feel trapped in their own organization. As someone who's worked with founders over the past 7 years to support them in adapting new ways of working so that they can be liberated from their business, I've witnessed 3 things that they tend to have in common. And that's what I want to share with you in this video. And I'm going to ask you some questions at the end to help you move into this state as well. So let's get started. The first commonality that I see in these founders is that they are very dedicated to doing their personal work. And what I mean by that is they are committed to their personal development and personal growth. And they are happy to really reflect on how they're showing up and changing themselves. So many of the founders that I speak with know that when it comes to changing how we work, it has to start with the inner work. The second common theme is that they're no longer managing people. I think this is one of the biggest bugbears that I hear in founders. They either say things to me like, I hate managing people, or that they're bad managers. And I can understand this because on the spectrum of how we kind of lead and manage people, we can really swing on this pendulum between being hyper controlling, but also being totally laissez-faire, where we just let people get on with things because we don't want to kind of interrupt them. So we can kind of pendulum swing on this way of leading and managing. And what I notice in all of these founders is that they don't want to manage. Their zone of genius, the thing that they're really good at, is not the people stuff. They're really good at the very thing that they've created, and they want to hone their energy and time into that. And so what they've done is consider alternative ways of working and embed practices like self-management, increasing the autonomy and decision-making power that their teams actually have, and basically removing themselves from so many of the decisions in the day-to-day that they just simply don't need to be a part of. So the second thing is that they're not managing people. And the third pattern that I see as being quite nuanced is that they think about growth differently. We seem to have this kind of obsession with growth and scaling within our wider society, but these founders are very intentional about their growth and what that growth means. I've always been a huge fan of Ricardo Semler, and one of his most famous quotes is that there are only 2 things that grow for growth's sake: businesses and tumors. And I think that kind of says it all really, that sometimes we can be so obsessed with growth, but to what end? What are we actually trying to do with that growth? When I've spoken to some of these founders, they've really considered, are we growing because we want our purpose and our mission to reach more people? Or are we simply growing because we want more profit? And there's not a good or bad answer to any of this, but it's about being very considered and intentional about what that growth looks like. Because as the company grows, so will it change and evolve with that. And if you want to keep the very thread and values of your organization, sometimes that means that things will have to shift and change along with it. So being intentional about growth and what that actually means to you as a founder, your purpose as a company, and your team is something to be considered. Today's video may have challenged your thinking, and I really hope it has, because if you want to be liberated from your business, enjoy life, and maybe even explore some other passions later on, then you can't keep using the same operating system that keeps you trapped within the system. There are a few questions I want you to reflect on that will help you move towards this state of liberation. So when you're thinking about your own experience as a founder and your journey within the company and how you want it to evolve and adapt, these questions might just help you take some of those first steps. My first question is about personal growth. What could you commit to this week to start your personal growth journey? What is one simple action or habit you can commit to? In terms of your management style, what's one decision that you could step back from and hand over to the team? And finally, growth. What does growth really mean to you and the vision of your company? If you've got a question about anything I've shared, drop it in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer it. But thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next week.